Well, the federal budget was very exciting, wasn't it? Hey, hugely boring. Just the same old government spending a truckload of money that it doesn't have and racking up more debt. Buying the votes of the economically and financially ignorant with silly little handouts. Here's $300 for your energy bill. Just giving our own money back to us and making it out to be some kind of gift. No cutback in government spending at all. And that is the only measure of a good budget, whether the government is cutting spending when it's been overspending. A surplus is meaningless if the government got a tax windfall in the year before, which they did. The question is, are they going to waste that one-off lucky win at the pokies and pay off the credit card a bit, or are they recklessly going to spend it? Chalmers getting excited about his surplus is like a guy who makes $5,000 a month, winning 10 grand at the pokies one day, spending 14 grand that month, and then telling his wife, oh, I've got a surplus of $1,000. Look at me, aren't I a good boy? No, you just overspent again and didn't pay off any of the family's massive credit card debt. Opposition leader Peter Dutton told the ABC News show, ABC Breakfast, the morning after the budget, that the government's handouts are just a band-aid on a bullet wound.
As most credible economic journalists have pointed out, this is an inflationary budget and it is going to make it harder for interest rates to come back, and it's going to make it more difficult for families and small businesses for longer. As was the case for Labor in Queensland facing an election, they're splashing out cash because they know that they've got a huge problem on their hands.
Mr Dutton told the taxpayer-funded government broadcaster that if we are going to be doing government handouts, we should be fixing a more serious problem in ways that will really help long term.
We've got people living in cars and in tents. The Prime Minister had nothing to say about that yesterday. The Treasurer had nothing to say about it last night. You've got 1.67 million people coming in over a 5-year period under this government. It's unprecedented. Not under any previous Liberal or Labor government have you seen the immigration levels this high. And that means that with an 11-year low in building starts, you are seeing people lining up 30, 40 deep to find a rental property. People can't buy a house at an auction for love nor money. And this government spent $315 billion more, which has driven up inflation and therefore interest rates.
That's Peter Dutton speaking with ABC News Breakfast on Wednesday morning. One of Australia's greatest free market thinkers is Ron Manners. 88-year-old Mr Manners is the founder of the Mancal Economic Education Foundation and the founder and former chairman of what was at one point Australia's third largest gold producer. Mr Manners' contribution to the mining industry earned him induction into the Australian Mining Hall of Fame in 2011 and an AO in 2020. He's got a new book out called The Impatient Libertarian, and he will be speaking at an event in Brisbane next week. If you want to go to that event, just jump on Eventbrite, B-R-I-T-E, eventbrite.com.au and look up Ron Manners and you'll find the event. It's Wednesday night in Brisbane at 6 o'clock, proudly presented by the Australian Institute of Progress. I'm very thrilled to have Ron Manners on the show today. Ron, thank you very, very much for joining us, sir. Good to have you here.
That's a pleasure, Damian.
Tell us a little bit about your thoughts on the federal budget before we get into talking about your book.
Well, Damian, all depends. Different people measure success in different ways, and you really have to understand our Prime Minister Albo, who came when he was at Sydney University. He came under the influence of a Marxist professor called Ted Wheelwright. And then Albo went on to form, and he ran the Trotsky Society at that university for quite a few years. As a matter of fact, his nickname was Trot.
Okay, I had heard that. Yeah.
Now, all that stuff he was quite proud of that, and it was all very visible on his profile, on his social media profile, until he became Prime Minister. Now it's all been whited out. So
I'm sure
you can't. So their way of measuring success is to recruit more people who are dependent on government, and not independent and dependent on themselves. And when they say they're going to create more housing, their idea is to create more government-owned housing, for which we will be forever locked into living in a government house. And their idea of unemployment is really a strange figure, as the private sector is being squeezed and is unable to meet all these unbelievably difficult industrial relations laws that are brought in, they pick up the people that become unemployed out of the private sector and employ them in the government sector. So
Yeah.
really, when you look at employed people in government sectors, it's really it's hidden unemployment figures. So, and so I say, we all measure things differently, and their measurement, by their measurement of success, this government said, this latest budget, federal budget, is completely successful because we'll recruit more people.
Yeah. It's successful at growing the size of government, which is what they obviously aim to do, and lessening our control. I've read the book, The Impatient Libertarian. It is a wonderful book, and I recommend everybody grab a copy, because not only in here do you tell a story of people who've influenced you, 5 figures that have influenced you, but you also lay out a bit of a roadmap for what we've got to do, and some ideas of how to actually go about fixing things, Ron. There seems to be a great groundswell of frustration out there, but it's very hard to break through because the left have so entrenched themselves, particularly in the last 25 years, I think, even more so than the 25 years before that. They've really entrenched themselves in our educational institutions, our media institutions. It's very hard to get traction nowadays, even corporates with DEI and ESG. What do we do to get out of this mess?
Well, I tell our young people, we have a whole bunch of Mankell scholars that we create opportunities for. I tell them the secret of maximum happiness and maximum life to look forward to is to quickly reduce their expectations for what government can do for them, and on the other hand, increase their expectations of what they can do for themselves. And it's sort of a simple little message, but it gets through to them that we are completely in charge of our future, and to fob that off and subcontract it out to the government is a recipe for failure. But we've been doing this every time, and it's a drift. And the results, I think the statistics were just released yesterday about how our educational standards have dropped substantially since the year 2000. That's 24 years. So much money has been poured into education, but our educational standards on all the key subjects are producing an inferior product, who are incapable of understanding what's going on to them. Now, the Marxist Trotskyite concept is for recruiting more and more people to be reliant on government. So they are extremely successful. They're so happy with these statistics that they come out. They don't want people to be well educated, to be able to rationally think for themselves. That's the last thing they want.
Yeah. You mentioned in the book, I think that's 1 in 3, is it? Australian employed people are employed by government.
Terrible.
Is that sustainable? I mean, no wonder we've got $1 trillion or $1.5 trillion, if you count state government, of debt.
Well,
right?
It's inevitable. The cost of servicing that government debt is beyond all the expenditure that they're spending on education and welfare, and it's unsustainable. The only way out when they get themselves into that situation is to seriously devalue the currency. And that's what the Australian dollar is slipping seriously against other world currencies. Yes. And you only notice that when you decide to travel or import something, and you find, hey, our dollar just doesn't go very far, and it's disappearing. Devaluing the currency is equivalent to declaring bankruptcy or partial bankruptcy and paying out the creditors 10 cents in the dollar. But that's what's been done by several South American and the East European countries. They had to devalue their currency because they had no other way out. I'm afraid that's probably on the present path. That's probably our only alternative. Could be
Ron,
rescued at any time.
Sorry, you've been doing this for a long time. I mean, you've been out there. Your story is just fantastic. I loved reading about it, your life story and your involvement with the Foundation for Economic Education, fee.org in the United States, which is a fantastic website for anybody who's interested in learning about economics and liberalism and libertarianism and different philosophies. But you know, you've been around for a while, shall I say, and one of the few people I interview that's older than me. But could you tell me, from your perspective, are things worse now than you can remember, or do you remember a time in Australia's history through the latter part of the last century where it was this bad?
My memory goes back to as far as the Menzies induced credit squeeze of 1960-61.
Right.
And that was a time where things were unsustainable. We had the economy was propped up with tariff protection, and you couldn't import the machinery you wanted. You couldn't import it. The tariffs were so high. And that was a terrible spot. I was in business with my father at that time, and they had very little concept of how the economy worked, and as the present federal government has no idea how by reducing the burden the economy will get up and go. So the Treasurer said to Bob Menzies, look, the economy's overheating, what are we going to do? So they decided to issue an edict to all the banks that all business overdrafts had to be cut by 50% within a week.
Wow.
And way back then, small businesses might have an overdraft of £10,000 or something like that. That had to be cut. So they all started knocking on doors and collecting debts and picking up. The whole thing contracted. The two biggest chains of retail stores all around Australia were Reed Murray and Cox Brothers. There was a branch of every one of those in every state, every city throughout Australia. Within weeks, they all closed.
My God.
Everything closed. Okay. And the whole economy absolutely stopped. They were dreadful times, probably worse than now. Through a total lack of understanding how there's no concept of reducing the burden, and the burden is intolerable again. If you want to start a business, it's very difficult.
In those days, it was very much the burden was sort of, I suppose, very clear and explicit in those sorts of strong government policies. These days, it's very subtle and insidious, and it comes in through green tape and red tape and compliance with oodles of complex regulations. And it's sold in this way that's sort of like, we're doing everybody a favour, we're so nice as government, you know, we're here to help and we're here to keep you safe. It's scary.
The approvals position is the approvals process is run by ideologues who just want to destroy the economy. Yesterday, I think that was Santos sacked 200 people in Western Australia. There's plenty of natural gas here. There's plenty of projects they want to bring on stream, whilst at the same time there's a drastic shortage of gas to create some alternative to this unreliable, what they call renewable energy, which is intermittent energy, that we desperately need this. All these projects are lined up, but they can't get approvals. So they've had to dismiss 200 vital people that were working for our welfare and our benefit. The average person has no concept that there's a link between prosperity and productivity. If you wanted to start up a company, you'd go and register it in somewhere like Estonia and have a foreign base for it. You could run your business anywhere in the world, but you would pick a jurisdiction where there is encouragement to start a company.
Yep. Ron, Yeah, I love the book. I love everything you say. It's great to talk to you. I hope when you're in town, we can catch up and sit down for a longer chat on the other side, because I think you've got an incredible amount of wisdom to impart to us all. Ron Manners, sir.
I might just can I mention one aspect about the book which is surprising. I think I explained in the book how I gave an impromptu talk to a think tank in Guatemala a few years ago, and it was why our Cal Economic Education Foundation is a little bit different. I said it's different because it was influenced by these 5 separate individuals who had completely dissimilar styles, and I analysed the styles in there.
Yeah.
And the feedback I'm getting is beyond belief, because I'm getting so many people, some high-profile people, some people I've known from way back. They're writing to me and saying they're using the same little pie chart apportionment of strategy versus ideas to analyse their own pie chart mix. And they're all getting completely different answers, but the information of why those 5 people were analysed and had completely different results has opened up their mind to analyse themselves,
Yes.
which to me makes it a very successful and very satisfying book for me.
Yeah, well, it's a fantastic book, and it's that aspect of it is great too, because I think you get these systems of analysing people in management these days, and they've got 700 different categories, and everybody gets so confused. It's a really simple way of looking at these 5 people that have influenced Ron through his life, and the ways in which they've balanced their nature is balanced between being ideas people or being strategists. And the book is called The Impatient Libertarian. I urge you to get a copy. And if you're in Brisbane, I'll be there. Join us on Wednesday night, the 22nd of May at 6 p.m. And you can get tickets on Eventbrite, brite.com.au. And if you put in the code other side as the code, you will get a discount on your ticket. So get onto Eventbrite, look up Ron Manners talk in Brisbane, and do join us for that one. Thanks, Ron.
It's a pleasure.
Great to talk to you. Really hope you enjoyed that content. There's a lot more where that came from, and it's available right here on YouTube. So do check it out. The Other Side with me, Damian Curry, your weekly summary news show, every Friday night dropping at 8 p.m. Also, we have lots of clips that come out during the week, so please subscribe. Press that little bell when you do subscribe. You can subscribe down there, you can subscribe up here, and we also have our full shows right here.